And begin the monthly meeting of the Zionsville Board of Parks and Recreation for Wednesday, December 14th. Let's go ahead and take roll call right now. Vice President Jill Pack.
Here.
Secretary John Wallenberg.
Here.
Tim Cassidy.
Here.
Don Salowitz.
Here.
Sarah Moore.
Here.
Chris Barksdale.
Here.
We have a full house once again. That's terrific. All right, the next item on the agenda then is the approval of the November 9th minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look those over? And are there any questions or comments?
No comments.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Bill Pack makes a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
John Wallenberg seconds. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, the next item on the agenda is the memorandum concerning our executive session last month. And we all know we have to sign that. We all have to sign that before we leave tonight, by the way. And Amy is going to explain why that's important.
Yes, sure. So whenever we hold an executive session, we don't keep minutes as we do for our public meetings, because what we talk about in an executive session is confidential. But we do sign a memorandum of executive session, which just outlines who was there and asserts that nothing was discussed in the executive session beyond what was advertised to be discussed. So that is what you'll be signing tonight.
All right, so we all need to, do we need a motion to accept that?
Yeah.
Okay. It's very short and very simple. You'll all have a chance to take a look at it and as we sign it. Does anybody have any questions about that or comments?
No.
All right, do we have a motion then to approve the memorandum of executive session?
I make a motion to approve executive session minutes.
John Salowitz makes a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Chris Barksdale seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is public comments. Do we have anybody tonight that would like to make any public comments? Jonah, do we have anybody online? We do not. Okay. All right, then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the update from the Pathways Committee liaison, Sarah Moore. Sarah.
Okay, so the Pathways Committee has been working with the Parks Board now to be able to do a little bit more with the time that we have to meet together and work specifically on pathways. So we're going to work more closely together in the future, and that's going to involve potentially some funding for projects that the Pathways can help make possible. And we're really excited to look at what our priorities are for the coming year and what we can all accomplish together.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about that or any comments about that? I'll just make one. I think that while the Pathways Committee doesn't certainly report to us, I think we have a lot of common desires and needs, and I think we can work together with each other better than we have. I think you being liaison to that committee has been a big help, but I think there is more we can do and more we can accomplish together. So I'm looking forward to being able to increase that connectivity and that partnership as the new year comes about. So
yes, the Pathways definitely, the committee definitely is too.
okay, and we will probably go ahead and have you do that next year too if you're amenable. We'll talk about that in January, but think about whether or not you want to take another year as the liaison to the Pathways Committee.
I already told the town I was interested in doing it. So if you're interested in having me do it.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that in January. It sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mhm.
And then let's take a moment here before we get to the staff reports. Jill, who is our liaison to the Parks Foundation, has a note about the Parks Foundation right now.
Yeah, yesterday the Zionsville Parks Foundation received a letter from a Zionsville resident that's passionate about the park system. They made a very generous offer to do a one-to-one match for any donations that are received before the end of this year. So by 12/31 of 22, up to $20,000. And that is a fantastic opportunity for the foundation to potentially raise up to $40,000. And the foundation is there to support the Parks and Recreation Department and the Parks Board. And those funds eventually trickle over towards us in a variety of sponsorships and grants from them, et cetera. So it really will benefit us greatly. And I encourage everyone to get the word out to anyone you might know that this is a great opportunity if you have a year-end donation that you're trying to look for a good place to make. That'd be a great one and it would be doubled.
Okay,
I saw it all over social media, so I'm surprised to hear that it just happened yesterday,
You did.
because I have seen it out
Yeah.
there already, so. The word
they're
is
working
getting
hard to
out.
promote that, and it's a great thing.
Yeah.
We
Well,
hope
we have
that
a
that's some
pretty
action.
short- A pretty short time frame to get it done, but so that's why they jumped right on it.
Oh, yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
great. I'm just really
Yeah.
excited it's
Yeah.
going that fast. I was happy to see it out there all together.
When is it in?
12/31 of this year.
All right, any other comments about that? All right, then let's move on to the staff reports, and we'll begin with our superintendent, Jared Logston.
Thank you, John. Welcome, Park Board. Just a couple of things I'd like to highlight from the superintendent report. The staff members did attend the Indiana Parks and Recreation Association Annual Conference held in Indianapolis this year. It's a great opportunity to network with other park systems, see what's going really well for them, gather ideas, and also just feel more supported in the Parks and Recreation industry. So we're very happy to be a part of that. Our own Mindy Murdoch actually presented as that as well, which is a great honor for our park system and our department for her to represent us. So I just wanted to mention that. The second item, the DNR Lair Grant Study. So earlier this year, we entered into an agreement with the DNR for their Lakes and River Enhancement Program. It's an 80 to 20 matching grant, and this year's project was to update our 2013 study. So understanding how the river or how the creek has changed over the past several years, where we need to have remediation work to improve our banks so that we can slow down erosion and restore the hydrology that the creek wants to do naturally. So that study is coming to a close. A draft report has been issued to myself as well as our DNR liaison. So we are reviewing that and will likely have that full report and study presented to you early next year. And the third thing I'd like to mention was the in-house weed wrangle that was held in November. Members of all departments of the town came and joined us out at Heritage Trail Park as we cleared the invasive honeysuckle brambles that had grown on the rail trail right of way. So this was no small bramble. These were 12, 15-foot tall branches that had been there for a very long time and well established. So it was nice to have the extra arms and the teamwork around the town chipping in to remove those. So we will look at that location as a spot to enhance with native plantings next year.
Great, Jared. I walked that this late afternoon. It looked great.
Quite impressive,
Fantastic.
right?
I'd forgotten that it was part of the weed wrangle, but it
Yep,
was
over 3 tons of honeysuckle removed from that. Just a couple hours of work. So-
unbelievably nice looking and groomed.
So next time you're up at Heritage Trail Park, take a peek just as the rail trail starts north of there. That is all from the superintendent report.
All right, and our Director of Maintenance Services isn't here tonight due to an illness, but Jared will go ahead and handle the Maintenance Services report as well.
Yes, our maintenance team has been very, very busy. Not only keeping up our parks with the patrons we still see in these colder months, but also spending over 400 hours building the sandbox, setting the platforms, and getting Mulberry Fields ready to transform into Winterfest. So I'm happy to say they were able to accomplish that enormous task once again. Mulberry Fields is now a 100-foot long, 50-foot wide real ice rink that has been enjoyed since last Friday at the ribbon cutting. So just an exceptional kudos to our maintenance team, small but mighty, for knocking out that massive goal. And that was most of maintenance over the past month.
Is that it?
Yep, that's the one highlight from that report. Moving
Okay.
on to recreation services. We did have 956 walk-ins at our nature center, so still just under 1,000 coming in regularly every month to see what is going on in the nature center. We had 244 attendees for nature center programming, as well as 77 attendees for outdoor recreation programs. So and as well as 330 for our private groups. So still a very active recreation division of our department, even when the months get colder. So Mindy and her team do an excellent job, and they have pivoted for the month of December to bring more life into the Winterfest ice skating rink event. So, I almost forgot. Want to especially mention the Frozen Fete that was held here at Town Hall, December 3rd. Over 230 princes and princesses attended that royal ball up in the St. Vincent's room upstairs here at Town Hall that was transformed into a magical snowy ball. And everyone had a great time. There's pictures online, and we'll probably look to do that again because it was so well received. So that was the brainchild of our recreation coordinator, Wendy Schrepperman, and our director of recreation, Mindy.
I got some really good feedback from just people talking to them that went to it, that said it was fabulous.
Just, yeah, over the moon excited with that one.
Yeah, Wendy did a great job with that. Mindy too. I mean, but I think Wendy probably did all the heavy lifting or most of the heavy lifting on that, and, you know, deserved a good pat on the back next time you see her. It was great.
What was the name of that?
That is Frozen Fete. So I believe
Frozen.
Fete is French.
Do we want to talk about the golf course in any more detail? Because Mike is here. We weren't sure Mike was going to come tonight. Does anybody have any questions? Mike, why don't you come on up just briefly? Golf course is closed for the year. The carts are tucked away for the winter. Is there any comment you wanted to make about the end of the season or how the season went?
Yeah, I don't have any really comments. I mean, we closed November 11th. We've moved, Pete and I, 2 by 2 like Noah's Ark, moved the carts over to Heritage Park. So yeah, they're in shelter. We aerated greens, tees, fairways, November 7th and 8th, right before the snow on November 12th. So it was kind of perfect timing. Right up till the end, we had $1,000 day on November 11th. So yeah, it was pretty much right till the end. We had people coming out to the golf course. Next day it snowed. So it was kind of perfect timing. So yeah.
Anybody have any comments for Mike?
We've
Well,
actually,
I'm sorry.
Just going to ask if you were going to stay for the 5-year plan, which has golf course related capital. And the next item after that is the golf course mower fleet purchase.
yeah,
Did we stand for those first
I
two
didn't know I was
items?
going to say that we're actually starting to sell 2023 season passes, and we've sold a handful already for next year. So
I think, you deserve a pat on the back too. It's been a pretty good year, given the challenges we had at the beginning of the year.
we're open June 11th to November 11th.
I mean, we didn't hit the same revenue that we did last year, but given the limitations we had because of starting late, I think it was a good year for the golf course, and, we should feel pretty good about it.
I think we're
Yeah.
pretty happy.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Jared, do you have something more you want to say before we get Amy to talk to us?
That's all from staff reports.
Okay. And now our Parks Attorney report from Amy.
This past month, we held a conference here at the town hall with representatives from Citywide Paving and their insurance company, their surety, who holds their performance bond on the golf park pathway project. We shared a lot of information. There were quite a few people around the table. We shared primarily our concerns with what had not been done pursuant to the contract. We're going to continue to share some additional information with the surety, including some drone footage that Tricia has taken to give the insurance company a better visual of what we had described to them. But we're continuing to take all of the necessary steps to call on that performance bond. We've sent out the letters. They requested the conference, so we were required to hold the conference, and now we're just moving through the procedure for that. We're also continuing to talk through some negotiations with Zionsville Community Schools with regard to obtaining the option to obtain the easement, the access easement that we had discussed last time. They seem to be receptive to that idea, at least on a high level. So we are working on some documents to get to them that they will propose to their school board in January.
And that's for the pathways to go from the Big Four Trail to Trailside Elementary.
Well, that's something different. We're also having a conversation about that, but I was actually mentioning the property
up
that is
north.
potentially going to be.
Right,
donated
okay, the donated
to them.
property.
Yes, the
Okay.
access easement there.
Okay.
Yes, we've also had conversations with them in the same meeting about getting some access easements in place, some temporary construction easements, so we can construct the pathway to Trailside Elementary.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we feel like we're making progress on both of those things in 2023. Hopefully we'll be able to get that across the finish line. Great. Thank you. Any questions for Amy? Okay, thank you, Amy. All right, now let's move on to new business, the 5-year master plan. Tricia is going to come up and talk about that. We have priorities and a staffing plan, which I'll go ahead and make the comment while you're getting up there that we're going to all find fairly aggressive, but I think doable as well. And also the accessibility report.
And I think what we have to show you will explain why it's aggressive. Definitely stop me at any point if you have questions. Okay. So this is kind of the final piece. It is the final piece for the master plan, other than pulling everything together in the document that will be submitted to DNR. You all will have a chance to review that before we submit it to DNR. But just as a reminder, we're going to go over public input, the different things that we did, what we heard, what those key takeaways were. The staffing study, again, there's some benchmark data where we compared with other cities that we'll go over, and then how that resulted in the proposed additions of staff that we have. Priority action plan. So I do have handouts when we get to that point of the proposed improvements for the different parks that we went over at the last meeting. I don't have that because we just have so much to go over in this. So these are for reference when we get to that point. And then an example of the ADA assessment, just so you can see what level that assessment was, how much detail there is in that assessment. And then just review of the next steps. So again, we had 3 public open houses in person, and then we had 2 virtual open houses. The first virtual open house that shows you, we had, over 7,000 views. And of those, over 2,500 were unique users. So unique people that were looking at the website. Survey numbers, the big community survey, we had 571 responses. And then we did 3 short surveys for golf course, youth sports, and then Perry Township. And those are the responses we had for those. And then the virtual open house number 2 was review of these proposed recommendations that we went over at the last meeting. And from that, we had 155 responses. We had more people that were looking at it, but to get that number of responses I was pleased with getting that number of responses. We were showing them the proposed plans, and then basically asking them to type out, what they like and what they didn't like. So that can take a little more work and a little more time. So getting 155 people to do that's good, very impressive. So key takeaways from all that public input. What did we hear? More trail connections. I'm sure that's a surprise to everybody. More trail connections to the big 4, but then also to parks. Community center, aquatic center, that was high on the list of things that people wanted to see. Carpenter Nature Preserve was another one that came up multiple times across the different methods of input. And then more basic amenities in each of the parks, more natural areas and preservation, and then more parks in underserved areas, which again, those proposed improvements all went directly to those key takeaways. Before we get into those priorities, because the 2 really do go hand in hand, the priorities for what of those improvements, we're proposing to implement over the next 5 years is also the staffing study. So a piece of that is increase in staff for the parks. There's lots of data that went into this. I'm going to show you some charts so you can just kind of quickly see how we compare with the others. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because there are a lot of slides. Stop me if there's one that you have particular interest in. The other thing we'll do is share this with everybody so that you can sit with it and kind of absorb some of the information. So it does include benchmark data and NRPA metrics, National Recreation and Parks Association. Okay, it's backwards from what Indiana is, so that's what trips me up. Look at existing and then proposed staff, and then again that proposed capital project plan. So population, the benchmark cities that we looked at, so Zionsville will always be that first column. And this is population numbers. So we looked at Merrillville, Goshen, Brownsburg, Valparaiso, and Westfield, and you can see they're pretty similar in terms of population, in terms of size. Number of parks, there is a bigger discrepancy. They're all pretty similar except for Brownsburg, which has fewer parks. They only have 4 parks. But if you look at the total acreage, they are closer, still not quite as much as Zionsville, but closer in terms of acreage. So again, looking at all these different similar towns and cities, Zionsville's at, towards the top end of all of those that we looked at in terms of acres that you're maintaining. Park acreage per 1,000 population, that's another one we like to look at just because it gives us a better understanding of how many people are using the parks. It's a rough metric, but it just gives you an idea. And then that peach colored NRP average, again, shows you that national average. Now, I will note with anything that you see with the NRPA average, how they get that information is just parks departments like Jared that are reporting to them. So it's not an exhaustive, not everybody has reported in. NRPA does not go out and get those numbers. It's just who's reporting in. It's a pretty extensive list, but just to keep that in mind, when we say that average, that is what it is based on. So number of FTE employees per park. FTE is full-time equivalent. So that lets us take full-time employees, we know what their hours are, 40 hours a week, pretty much, every week of the year. But it factors in part-time employees. So part-time that might be 20 hours a week, part-time that might be, 15 hours a week, part-time that might be just during Winterfest. And factoring all that in to come up with a calculation of what the full-time equivalent, and then we like to look at acre of park, because again, that's just a rough metric. It doesn't show you specific facilities. Every single park system has different facilities that you're trying to maintain. But again, it just gives you a gauge. And I don't think it will be a surprise to anyone, but Zionsville is down at the bottom. When you look at the chart there, at the bottom of the list, in terms of number of FTE employees per acre park compared with these benchmarks. Another one I think is interesting to see is just operating budget per capita, to see how Zionsville meets up with both the NRPA average and then also these other benchmark cities. And Brownsburg is a little bit lower, but you can see there Goshen, Westfield, and Valparaiso is definitely higher. And that NRPA average is quite a bit higher. This is again so the chart at the bottom is NRPA. So Zionsville's FTE is 12.75 people. And the NRPA, based on the acres of parks maintained. So the 3 metrics that you see there are sort of the lower average, the middle average, and then the higher average. And you can see Zionsville is still almost half of that lower average for FTE per acre of park. This is just a chart that shows how that FTE is calculated. So it shows your full-time and your part-time, and then the notes on the side again have the hours per week. The important number is that 12.75 there at the bottom with your FTE. So before I get into the proposed, keep in mind, those numbers have been pretty consistent for a while. And those people are now maintaining Overly Warman Park, which is going to come online, Elm Street Green, Heritage Trail, playgrounds, new playgrounds, the tot lot there at Lions Park. Those are all new playgrounds that have been added and have to be maintained, and trash that's taken out with more people that are coming to those parks. The dog park, again, that's kind of a higher intensity maintenance. And then thinking about the Big 4 rail trail, the extensions that we have and then, are almost complete now. The second column there on the right is things that we think will be coming on, that we intend to be coming online in the next 5 years. So again, trying to account for what do we have now? How do we stay current with our peer cities? And then how do we plan for future parks and acres that are going to need to be maintained? All of that adds into, it's looking at all of those metrics for this proposed list. and programs. I think that is another very important thing to keep in mind. Think about the number of programs that the Parks Department was doing just a few years ago compared with what they're doing now. It's an exponential increase in the number of programs. And so the number of people that are participating in those and the number of people that it takes to perform those. I can't see it very well on my screen. It looks like I can see it pretty good on the TV screen. So this is the total proposed staff to be implemented over the next 5 years. And that would get Zionsville from the 12.75 to the 43.99, essentially 44 full-time equivalent staff personnel. That would be, and that includes maintenance and that includes recreation. You'll see on there, there's a separate category in there for Carpenter Nature Preserve, just what is intended and planned out there. We believe the best approach is for dedicated staff that is out there to help maintain that property. And then the golf course and then Winterfest are pulled out separate too. So I'm going to take that and then we're going to break it down just so you can see how we can phase those over the next 5 years. So this shows you existing plus those proposed, your FTE per acre of park. You're now up with Brownsburg, higher than Maryville and Goshen, I would say, and Westfield, but I would say that more closely matches the expectations of the residents of Zionsville. I think there's a high expectation for the maintenance and the programs that are, expected to be offered in Zionsville. So how do we do that? Again, this shows you how that, so 2023 budget's done. We're not adding any staff. That's already been decided. So how do you do that from 2024, 25, 26, and 27 to get to those numbers? And John mentioned, that those are aggressive. I will say they're reasonably aggressive because as you see, that just gets us a little bit above and kind of to those peer cities that were looked at for the benchmark study. I think the number that kind of how we do it is usually less informative as what's the bottom line? What is this going to add to the budget? Because it's going to need more money to the budget. And the way we have it proposed, you can see there along that bottom line about how much that'll add to each year for the budget. This is assuming Carpenter comes online. So those staff are added for Carpenter Nature Preserve. And then some additions for golf course. As improvements are made, it's just going to become that much more successful. You've seen all that Mike and his crew and Jared and everybody have been able to do with the golf course. And then Winterfest too. We do see Winterfest continuing to grow. So adding some staff for them. I'll pause before we go on to the next, see if anyone has any questions. Just threw a lot of information at you. Or concerns with what you see.
I have a question.
Yep.
So 2023 has already been set. Did that go up from 2022 or did that
Let Jared answer.
stay the same?
We were able to expand our part-time line within the general fund, so we will have additional part-time help throughout the season for maintenance as well as our program staff. So we did inch in a little bit more, knowing we're falling behind with the rail trail extension as well as overlay.
So are you going to get into how this all gets funded?
Not yet.
Okay.
So you will see with the next section, you can see how, again, so then we'll add in the capital projects. And then along with that becomes ideas of how we're going to fund that. So it's everything from grants and private partnerships to increases to the capital. We will make some recommendations, but this plan will not say, do this, this, and this. It will give you some options, but then it's kind of, in the next few years, the reality of what grants are available and what capital, because your budget comes from town council.
Mm-hmm.
So what that looks like. Really what we're doing is showing the making the sausage, how we got to those numbers that show it's justified, to get to those numbers.
I think it demonstrates too that the staff that we currently have is working so well to get what they get done when they're so understaffed.
Yeah.
They do a tremendous job. And like you said, the residents of Zionsville have a certain expectation of what our parks should be and how they should be maintained, as well as we will continue to grow as a park department. We'll add parks in the next 5 years. Not sure exactly where. We have a few ideas. And our town is continuing to grow. And so as the town grows again, more parks will come on board. And if we don't start the process of getting ourselves properly staffed, we're gonna hit a wall at some point down the line where, instead of going in and asking for a smaller increment from town council, a smaller number of employees, that we have to go in and say, we need twice that many or 3 times that many, which we'll never get.
These numbers are year over year increases, right?
Yes,
So not from like 2022, it's with the numbers at the
Yes.
bottom show 2024 to 2025, that's the
Yes.
change.
so yes,
So are there-
2024, yes.
Okay, so are
Yes,
there
you're adding-
grants? I mean, in my experience here, the grants have been mostly for project related, not staff related, so is there anything out there that funds additional park staff, or is that truly a
Fees.
budgetary item? Fees and
These
mean,
for,
income
like,
that we
naturalist
produce.
programs or carpenter.
There are some, they're not as many, and Jared could speak to this too. There are some, AmeriCorps is one that will actually pay for staff for, I think it's a year. It depends on what the grant is. So there are some other grants and funding sources. They're not as prolific as funding projects, capital projects, buying property, that type of.
So in addition to capital projects, we may also need to seek avenues to
Yes.
generate revenue to fund our staff increases.
Yes. Yeah,
But the point is, at this point, this is aspirational. This is what we think we need. And it's up to us as a board and up to us as a town to find a way to fund it.
yes. First to agree, this is what you need. And then, yes, how do we go about achieving this? Okay, we'll move on. Like I said, I will send this, and if we need to talk about it again at the next board meeting or, email some thoughts, we still, this isn't set in stone. This is your plan. So to be sure that we incorporate the changes that, that you all think with that. So we will talk about next, capital projects. So again, these are just essentially the slides from the last meeting's presentation with the proposed park improvements.
Yeah.
And what we have done is taken those improvements and divided them into each of the 5 years. There will be the general caveat with all of these. If a grant becomes available that we don't know about right now, that is perfect for one of these projects that's in year 5, then it will bump up to whatever year that grant is available. So that is written into the plan that you have that flexibility. But this is trying to line out using your budget, using park impact fees, using the grants that we know are out there. How can we make these happen? Not everything that is in that packet that Jared just handed out is in the next 5 years. Some of it is further out. Because when we start putting numbers to it and trying to adjust for inflation and trying to adjust for, I say trying, because if we think of the last 2 years, no one would have put numbers down like what we've been seeing. But trying to account for that so that we can again have a sustainable but achievable goals for the next 5 years. So 2023, so next year, it is Carpenter Nature Preserve, So first purchase the land. And there's a star by that because I kept that estimated cost out of the total that you see at the bottom. We're trying to keep these pretty even over the next 5 years, and that purchasing the land, that first of all, there's lots of different avenues that may happen, but that kind of throws us way off in terms of trying to keep that budget line the same over the next 5 years. So that's why that number is left out. Phase 1 is included in there. So the first column estimated cost is the low end. The second column is the higher end. So again, it's a range, and it's trying to account for, are there things that we don't see that are added into it? It's so preliminary when you're looking at master planning and the concepts that we have. We like to give a good range because it depends on when you get into it, there may be some variation. And again, if it's kicked out 5 years, then you may be more towards the higher end of those estimates. So Carpenter Nature Preserve Phase 1, which is pretty much the entrance drive and parking and trails, a small playground. So getting people out there to see the site, which is incredible. Lincoln Park improvements. So all those improvements that we had talked about last board meeting. And then Elm Street Green canoe launch, which we believe when the down tree that was out there that everybody was using as sort of an informal way to get canoes and kayaks in, it's gone. It has been washed away. So we see that bumping up. And it was also included in the last master plan, that canoe launch improvements. You'll see there's a mixture in each of the years of new, whether it's new facilities or new parks, and then making improvements to existing parks. So trying to keep that balance in mind too. So I'll go through these, and if we need to flip back and maybe reorder some, we can do that.
Is there a reason, just like the ADA is blank?
We do not have the total. I don't have the total for ADA. We have the full assessment, but I don't have the numbers that we have are pretty rough, and they're honestly a little bit low, just again, based on recent bids that we've gotten in. So we need to total out what that is, and then we'll add in that ADA. And it may be another one of those, it's a portion of it that is feasible to be able to be done, but that will be consistent over all 5 years.
And some of the ADA improvements will be made just by virtue of doing the
Projects,
because the
exactly.
projects will have to be done up to code. So
That's
that
more,
would be included in the-
that's more of existing, improving current parks.
It
correct?
is.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Just wanted
Yeah.
to clarify that. So-
And there will be, again, there will be a dollar amount in there for the final plan, but at this point, we're just kind of keeping it off because it will be even between the 5 years. Essentially, you just establish a budget that you're going to spend for each of the years to make those improvements.
Thank you.
And several of those improvements will be done by Jared and his crew. They won't necessarily be you need to hire somebody, you need to pour concrete, whatever it is, those things that can be done. A sign needs to be raised. That's something that the existing staff can do. So 2024, so year 2, we're looking at Starkey Nature Park, the parking lot, making those improvements. Mulberry Fields pickleball courts, phase 2, which includes the restroom building, and the next set of the new bank of 4, another bank of 4 pickleball courts. Zion Nature Sanctuary, repair and improvement. So the shelter that's out there is at the end of its life. It needs either some good improvements done to the shelter so that we can maintain it, or may need to be replaced. So we have that in year 2. There was some discussion in our steering committee about maybe moving that one further down the list. So we can review that after we go through all of them. And you'll see there at the bottom that is about anywhere from 2.2 to 4.5 million in terms of estimates. Year 3, so 2025 is the golf course clubhouse. So new clubhouse and then drainage improvements. That's a pretty big project. So Creekside Nature Park is the other one that we had put on there, which is a smaller project, needs to be done, but a smaller project that can be incorporated for that year. And then year 4, Holiday Nature Sanctuary, and then the trail, the vacant Holiday Road, Pleasant View Road trail, the one that goes from Turkey Foot Park north to Holiday, and then it goes further north.
Holiday
Yeah.
Road and the bridge.
Yes, the bridge. Those two seem to go hand in hand. When Holiday happens, that the trail, there may be smaller parts of the trail that happen before that, but really to complete it, we've included that here in 2026. And then Turkey Foot, the bridge repairs. Again, the bridge, there are pieces of it, parts of it that are nearing the end of its life, or that it just needs some improvement to extend that life with the bridge, which is common with bridges. And then, so 2027, we have Heritage Trail Park splash pad and restroom. So we've got a restroom building at Mulberry in year 2. And then the golf course, the clubhouse improvements, and then another restroom building here in year 4, I believe, unless I've lost track, which does get us a restroom building on the north end, towards the north end of, the rail trail, kind of in the middle, and then the south, which is the trailhead that's going on now, that you would have year-round restroom buildings along the big 4, which is a huge asset to have out there. Carter Station fitness equipment. This is one, again, the steering committee talked about. Maybe this falls further down. Maybe it's not as big a priority. It falls into more the long term. And then the American Legion Crossing, those improvements would be included in this year. And then the long term, so I did lose track of my years. Long-term projects, thinking Carpenter Nature Preserve, the Nature Center, Overly Warman Park, splash pad and restroom building. So again, another restroom building, year-round restroom building that would be added to the park system. Mulberry Fields, that final phase. So the shelter and the final pickleball courts, and then Cato Nature Park and some public art. Zionsville Road is what we have identified on here. These will be included in the plan. The plans that you see will be included in the plan, but the actions are going to be more of fundraising efforts and grant efforts to make these things happen in the next 5, 10, whatever it happens. But there are things that need to be started now to make these things possible further out.
You have to think about what's not in here. As I think back, you may get an opportunity to buy a parcel over that adjoins Elm Street Green, or that would combine Lions Park with Elm Street Green. That's a possibility, but you can't, there's no way to really predict that or put that in a plan. I'd also say that, this is like $3 million a year, and the two biggies are Carpenter Nature Center and the golf course clubhouse, and those can be financed perhaps in non-traditional ways. I mean, we're talking about it with Carpenter. So yeah, don't forget about contingencies, I guess.
That is a part of the plan. It does talk about the need to be flexible. This is a good roadmap, but when an opportunity presents itself, somebody donates something, to be sure that Parks Board and Parks Department has the ability to be flexible to incorporate that. So the plan does talk about that. And the column there, you'll see that funding source there on the end. That will end up and be a big chunk of a column, because we include the grants that are out there now. Again, those private-public partnerships, and that could be town and developer. That could be town and I'm thinking YMCA, or the schools, something similar like that. And then it will list the particular grants that are out there now. That'll be a current list. And it will include, again, budget, and for some of these, the potential for bonds, that could be another way to fund these different projects. Anything that jumped out in terms of, no, that's in the wrong place? Not off the bat.
No.
Any concerns with those bottom line that we're showing? I know it's hard to answer that when it's like, how are we paying for it? And we don't have that particular answer.
One thing, going back to the staffing, so we saw the numbers, and it's at 16, 20, so that's increasing 20 people, right? Or
Yes.
20, or it's. So it's not growing, it's not like 16 and we're adding 4, that's like, we're actually looking at 16, 20, 25, 30, whatever it was.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yes,
make sure it was a running total aside or not, just want to clarify that. So thank you.
yes, yeah, which ends up being a much, bigger number of staff there at the end
Yep.
and budget too.
That's why I use the term aggressive.
Aggressive, yeah, right.
It's pretty aggressive.
Okay, I will show you real quick the ADA assessment. And like I said, we'll send this out so everybody can absorb it. I know it's a lot to see on a screen and a lot of numbers. If you're like me, I need to be someplace quiet and sit with those numbers to really think through what does that mean? And again, think through how you might fund that. I'm not gonna read it. We're not gonna go through it. But again, I just want to show you. So this is Elm Street Green, which is one of the examples. And this includes, again, looking at community gardens. And from an accessible standpoint, what are the changes that need to be done to be sure that we are being sure anybody, whatever their ability, can utilize that park for what it's intended, not just get to the parking lot, not just get to the shelter, actually be able to use that park for what it's intended. So Elm Street Green, there's a lot of like the shared use path, even down to the signage, the interpretive signage, canoe launch, the kayak launch, parking, shelter, down to the playground. So really looking at, I think this is 10 pages. Yeah, 10 pages for Elm Street Green, which is somewhat of a small park compared with a lot of the parks. So we have this assessment for every one of the parks in the park system. And it will be delivered to Jared as a database that they can check off when they implement one of these, that they can check it off, which then can be submitted, for the ADA compliance to show that you're making improvements and that you're working towards making the system compliant with current standards. And some of these are, when it was installed, that wasn't standard. Some standards have changed too. Next steps. So again, it's taking essentially all these presentations and all these pieces that you have seen, compiling that into the document that then will be distributed to you all. Jared gets to see it first and make sure I didn't spell anything wrong. And then distributing to you all to look over the draft, and then we submit to DNR. That first draft document is January 16th. He's used to just seeing half of the book January 16th. So it may take a month or two before if we receive any comments back from DNR. You won't officially adopt it until after we have that final approval from DNR. Any questions?
It's a lot to take in.
It is a lot.
But I would refer to Tim and John Wollenberg, who were here at the beginning of the last 5-year plan. I mean, there was a lot in the last 5-year plan. And I think it must have seemed daunting at the time, but we have accomplished most of it at this point. So perhaps you could give us some inspiring words as we take a look at this, and it looks like it's so big and so much.
If it's not in the plan, you won't get it unless it's something that's falling from heaven. So, I mean, that's the key thing, and it's ours. We have to, council has been, and administration has been involved in the creation of the 5-year plan. It's been great. Their participation has been more than ever before, which is great. So yeah, it's a big, aggressive plan, but hey, you can do it.
Seems we timed our exit perfectly.
I've been there, done that, not doing it yet.
No, this is more. This is more than what was on there 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think the numbers are different too. The past 2 years have increased costs so substantially that it's a bit more alarming than I think what we saw previously. But like Tim said, I've got all the confidence in the world. And like you said too, if it's not on the plan, the plan's a roadmap to pick and choose based on what becomes available. And so I think it's always good to have an aggressive goal for that than to try to reel in the reins during the 5-year plan process. It's not really time to do that.
You know, considering our growth in the last 2 years alone is, you only expect that to continue to push that direction too. So more people, more wants, and
Well, I consider what John and Tim have said to be encouraging. And I guess the only thing I would say is that when you look at it as one big package, it is daunting. But if you take it piece by piece and step by step, it's like, working your way through a book. Sarah, you can understand this, working your way through a book chapter by chapter. It's not, and you don't have to take in the whole all at once. If we break it down, it becomes less intimidating.
Question. So where does the community interest in the rec center fall in? I didn't see that listed or any part of that listed in any of the 5 years.
Good question. Yeah. And so it show up in the master plan. And we talk a lot about there just needs to be more study, more exploration of how that happens. The master plan shows some examples of how that can happen. Is it a partnership with the Y? Is it Parks Department run? That would be a completely different Parks Department from what you see today to have that done. Does the town run it? Is it completely private? Is it town owned, but a hospital runs it? So we talk about the different ways that could happen. We talk about how it came up in all, people have been talking about it. They were talking about it in the previous 5-year plan. They're talking about it now, how that's addressed and what the future steps forward are. What the plan does not include is the suggestion or recommendation that become a Parks Department run facility. That's just you see the numbers we have in the staffing study now. If we had added in a rec center and looked at some of those peer cities, it's 10 times what we're showing now in terms of staff. Does that make sense? Does that seem like a good way to approach it?
Yeah, I guess my concern would be selling the need for a feasibility study to the council or the administration if it's not, I guess, more spelled out in the plan. Even just that part of it, the feasibility study portion, just to kick it off. Like if we don't have that in our 5-year plan, then we're definitely punting it down the road.
And maybe we add that in there. Usually we do have a column 2 for responsible parties. So maybe that's where we identify that, this isn't just on the park board. At least that's our recommendation at this point. This isn't a park run facility. So the responsible parties are whoever they end up being. Is that town? Is that economic development? Who that ends up being.
Yeah, we'll point out that we did have it in our last 5-year plan.
Mhm.
And it was rejected when it came time to bring it before the council. I wouldn't want to put it in there just for it to be rejected again. I think there has to be more thought given to it. And in my mind, the current thinking, in my mind at least, is that this is something that's too big for the Parks Department.
Yeah.
I think this needs to be a town-wide initiative.
I agree.
We don't have anywhere close to the bandwidth to handle something like that.
It does need to show up as something that we heard, from the
Yes.
community.
Yes.
One other thought is, I think in my time on the board, we didn't need to do this because we had the large bond issue for many of the projects, but one thing we never really pursued was alternate funding. I mean, really aggressively pursued. We always talked about it, but for some of these projects, as Creekside Corporate Park grows, there's quite a few, potential suitors there, which, maybe as a Parks Board could more aggressively look at ways to fund these projects outside of, purely grant money or bond money.
Jared
So-
could probably talk to you for a few hours on that.
I'm
I think
sure.
he's got.
I'm sure he could.
Okay,
All right,
well,
any
thank
other
you all.
thoughts or comments?
Very good.
Okay, Tricia, thank you.
Thank you.
That was a
you.
lot.
I know, I'm sorry.
That was a lot. All right, the next item on the agenda is the golf course mower fleet purchase.
All right, and to help me explain this, I will call up our golf course manager, Mike Wall, just to assist with the request tonight. Want to step up here, Mike? While he's come up here, I just want to mention the 5-year master plan is a roadmap to the next 5 years and beyond. And it's not about where we are today, which is a fantastic place, but where we want to go as a town, listening to our community and figuring out a way to get there. So I'm happy to say that the more I learn in this role, the more partners I'm learning about beyond Zionsville's municipal borders. I'm happy to say in the last 5 years master plan, the Next Level Trails grant wasn't even a thing at that point. So just the other stakeholders, not only in the state, but private and public partnerships, there are a lot of opportunities that people can find a commonality of marching towards these very aggressive objectives. So we are determined to explore every single one of those, but we most certainly need the staff and the manpower to do that. So that's why that was a critical piece of this next 5-year master plan, so that we can grow along with Zionsville.
That was well said. Thank you. All
So
right,
back
on
to
to the lawnmower.
Onto the lawnmower. So as mentioned, there's no reason to underappreciate how much Mike and his staff has done to the golf course in recent years. Just the level of service and the improvements from aerating the greens for the first time in multiple years. Of the fairways, though. Continually improving the maintenance prescription of the golf course to have the best grounds that we can to welcome Zionsville players into our course. So just complete accolades to him and his crew as they continue to improve the course. And they have been doing that with machines that are well over their expected life. So some of our mowers are coming up on just shy of 20 years of service. Others have miles on them that would equate to 250,000 miles on a vehicle. So truly to remain operational and pristine condition of our greens, we have to invest in our fleet for the future. So tonight's request would be for the 2023 budget for the golf course, which there are approximately $100,000 in the equipment fund for next year. And that would be to purchase 2 specialty mowers for the golf course. And I will hand it off to Mike to talk a little bit about each of those pieces.
Yeah, so the first piece would be a greens mower, triplex mower, a John Deere mower. The total on that would be $71,000. Kyle, who does our greens mowing, and I went up to Purdue University. We had Kyle mow one of the greens up there. It's basically Toro or John Deere. We could get Toro, but it probably wouldn't be until 2024. It's basically a Coke and Pepsi, John Deere and Toro. They're both great machines. The John Deere we could get next June, so that we would be able to use this mower so that Tim could come out in the senior men's league next year. And by the way, Tim, I can join the senior men's league next year. So, so I'll be there next year too. Greens mowers and greens are basically when someone shows up, plays a course, if a green is pure and rolling, people walk away and say, I'm coming back. People walk to the 6th green and say a hydraulic leak. They walk away and tell 10 people and say, hey, the 6th green has a hydraulic leak. Like Jared said, our current greens mower has the equivalent of 250,000 miles on it. It's been there since 2004, 2006. It's gone through repairs after repairs after repairs. We can definitely get through to June with it, but the request is that we can, if we could purchase this John Deere mower. The other mower is a Lastec pull behind 11-foot rough mower. We're currently using a Hustler mower that's 6 feet wide, this one being 11 feet. we'd be able to be more efficient. And the price on that is 26,000. And we would use our John Deere rider to pull this behind and just be that much more efficient. We don't currently have a pull behind unit. And like I said, we use this Hustler that's 6 feet wide, this being 11 feet wide, we'd be that much more efficient. We would still use the Hustler mower to get in and around trees, but it would just be that much more efficient. So the total price on all this would be 89,100, and we'd be going through Sourcewell, which is, we would be getting the best price available. The Last Tech would be available in April. So instead of 2004, we'd be getting this right away to start the season with. So yeah, so
Jared, how would this be funded?
So a line item for this equipment was included in the 2023 budget that was approved for the golf course. So there is $100,000 in that line. This would be 89 of that, leaving $10,820 for any additional equipment needs for the year. As Mike mentioned, we are all about band-aiding and Frankensteining our equipment as much as we can, but with a mower that's nearly twice as wide, we could reduce our fuel costs throughout the season as well as our staff hours of mowing. So not only would the machine be more efficient, but it also reduced costs in other areas. So certainly a good investment, especially as our current equipment is nearing the end of life or exceeded.
2 quick questions. One, is there an option to buy these used or gently used, certified pre-owned type of?
No, exploring that.
Is that even a thing for golf course equipment?
there definitely is the option of purchasing used. I've talked to many of my reps. Lots of the people talk to me and say that used equipment in the golf business tend to be other people's problems. And really the price on these used equipment is in such demand because with new equipment taking so long to get, actually the difference for used equipment and new equipment really isn't that big of a difference right now. So there is used equipment, but like I said, in talking with many of my, not necessarily John Deere reps, but other reps that are former superintendents, they're basically saying, you can buy that, but there are other people's problems that they're getting rid of.
Sure.
And they turn into your problems.
So, the second question is, would we be able to sell that one problem we have once we get a new one? To offset this a little bit. I know you said we're going to keep the Hustler mower.
We could keep that, well, we could sell it, but the intention would be to still keep the greens mower. And we could lift the blades up and use it to mow approaches to actually enhance the course that much more.
Okay.
So that approaches it actually enhances the appearance of the course. So we could use that piece of equipment, not as much and not as hard. We wouldn't be using it every day, maybe every third day. And then the appearance of the approaches will be that much more aesthetically pleasing to the golfer.
So the question with the budget, so that 100,000, that just for the golf course it was budgeted, and
Yes.
you have equipment you need, that's not taken away from equipment from the rest of the department.
Correct. Yep. So this is within the fund 680, which is the golf course operating fund.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that.
Do you think 10,000 would be enough for the rest of the year for the golf course?
I think the only equipment we bought last year was the ADA cart, right?
Sure.
So it's very infrequent that we buy equipment like this for the course. We usually lease our golf carts. So every 5 years, we kind of look at that. But as far as owning equipment, most of it is towards the end of its life. And
Okay. And
Not-
how many years do you expect this to last?
well, if the previous models have lasted close to 20, I think Mike and his team do a great job of preventative maintenance, and we'll certainly get the investment out of it. Another thing to mention is with the hybrid triple X mower, that is a specialty mower. It's not the same ones we use in our park system. So in our current situation, if our greens mower goes down, I don't know what our contingency is.
Our current, yeah, we basically, well, if our current one goes down, our vendors are kind of nice enough to let us borrow one.
Yeah, so borrow and begging is kind of our action plan now as a backup. So this would at least allow,
Or actually, that guy over there, he's to the walk behind. He's getting too old.
Will the pull behind be able to use in other capacities other than,
that's
golf
more of a
course?
general mower, right?
or only before the golf course?
I mean, in theory, it could be used for other, but, we'd probably be using it. I mean, it could be used for other reasons, but, yeah, we borrow, I mean,
Right, it's the same,
yeah,
same pocket, just
We're all
just
one
curious if
family.
it had
we're all.
more, that would open any, avenues for Jared and other capacities,
Yeah.
so.
Like we would mow the tall grasses down with it. Like we borrowed the Kubota, we wouldn't have to borrow their Kubota now, we could then mow that.
And conversely, if ours went down, we could ask a favor as well. So just making us a little bit more resilient for the demands of our park system.
So this year's budget had a line item already sort of specifically for this. And next year we could anticipate that it would go back to what it was or closer to what it was minus
Correct.
this.
Yep, this is the first year, I think probably in the history of the golf course fund that this amount of money was allocated to an equipment line like this. So certainly a one-time capital expense. We're not looking to do this sort of thing every year. Utilizing cash savings from the golf course previous revenues. So
You mentioned that we can't get a Toro in the same time frame, that would take a lot longer. So we're focusing on the John Deere brand.
Correct.
Have we done competitive shopping among dealers? I see we're getting this from Cincinnati, so I assume this is our best bid on this.
So with the Sourcewell contract, the town of Zionsville is a member of that group. They handle the legwork of getting competitive bids for these types of items. So truly, the state of Indiana is getting the best price for this equipment. So every year, John Deere gives them their portfolio prices, and if they're the most competitive, they're selected to be a contract with Sourcewell. So it's a really great program to make sure you are getting the best deal. And I believe the Toro quote was actually slightly higher as well. So not only would it take longer to get the equipment, but we're also having cost savings here with John Deere.
Is there a motion needed for this?
Yes.
Let me say.
You
all
got
the
some more there,
things.
okay, so.
So as this is for next year's budget, we wouldn't want to execute this until January 1. So with your consideration tonight, it would be to execute this quote for these two items at a cost of $89,180 to be executed January 1st or later. And the reason we're trying to do this now in our December meeting is just to get that 13-day head start, get our order in the queue, because as we all know, supply chains have been nothing but fun over the past year and a half.
Okay, so if there are no more questions or comments, I'll take a motion to approve this expenditure as of January 1st of next year. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the mowers for the golf course.
Okay, we have a motion from John Salowitz. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Sarah Moore seconds. Let's take a roll call vote. Jill Pack,
Hi.
John Wollenberg,
Aye.
Tim Cassidy,
Aye.
John Salowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale.
Aye.
I say aye as well, making it unanimous. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jared. The next item under new business is our 2023 legal services contract that is in your packet. And this is identical to last year's or this current year's legal services contract. And I think Amy has an additional comment or two beyond that.
Yes, it is identical, just the dates have changed. The vast majority, of our cost was contained within this. I think the only thing that were charged for legal services outside of the retainer agreement last year were some recording fees, some very small recording fees. And then litigation is separated out from this year's contract and from next year's contract. So we had some costs associated with the potential litigation to gain access to some properties that the town had purchased in connection with the trail expansion project. And so that was built separately, and I think, John, I can't remember, was it 1,600 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
I think was.
It wasn't full-blown litigation costs, thankfully.
It's not full-blown litigation
Yes,
costs,
but there was some fee associated with that. So generally speaking, I think that this past year, our legal services were a bargain and we stuck close to this price, very close to this price. And whatever we paid above that was minimal and I think called for. So does anybody have any questions or comments about this contract as it's written? And then I'm going to go ahead as a show of support and make the motion that we accept this legal services contract for Amy's services to continue in 2023. Do I have a second?
I second.
Chris Barksdale seconds. Let's take a roll call vote. Jill Pack,
I,
John Wallenberg,
Aye.
Tim Cassidy,
Aye.
John Salowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
I,
Chris Barksdale.
Aye.
I say aye as well, making it unanimous. All right. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everyone. Now we're going to go on to old business and Overly Warman Park.
All right, similar to the golf cart improvement project, the Overly Warman project has also been delayed. We did issue letters to both of the contractors and their sureties, just with the notice that it was our intentions to consider termination. We are still ongoing with that conversation with the golf course agreement, but I'm happy to say that once that letter was received by HIS Construction, they mobilized onto the site and have been knocking out the punch list aggressively over at Overly Warman Park. So if you do walk the park, you'll notice new signage and wayfinding throughout the park, several grading improvements, asphalt, I believe, has been laid as well. So they're truly trying to get that done now that that letter has been issued. So we will stay on them with no expectations of extending that contract into the new year, except for items that might be weather dependent, like any remaining asphalt. So
And Jared, how many new trees? I always bitch and complain whenever maintenance has to cut down trees, but finally the balance has righted itself. How many new, I mean, I couldn't believe it today walking through there. How many?
3,248, I believe. I just started our Tree City recertification, so I was able to include those numbers. But don't
Wow.
quote me on that exactly. So certainly a lot of new saplings out of the site, and we will monitor those for the next 3 years as part of our mitigation work within the floodplain. But also we have our natural resource technician, Mallory, as well as our series of volunteers that will help make sure those trees have the best chance of becoming mature and reforesting the site. So
Yeah, some of them look a bit anemic, but there is some guarantees associated with them, right?
yeah, there is a 1-year warranty for all planted. And then after that, we understand there'll be some level of survivability that is below 100%, obviously, but even 2/3, I mean, we're talking over 2,000 trees at that point. So it'd just be phenomenal.
And if you haven't been down there, you gotta take a look and see the signage. Just the signage makes a big difference. It makes it look more finished.
Absolutely.
I think I sent pictures to everybody this weekend of how that. So we're
Fantastic.
making progress and we think they're operating in good faith.
Yep. So we will
this
continue to hold the pressure though, to make sure this
Yeah.
gets executed.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item, the Rail Trail Southern expansion.
So right next to Overly Warman Park, the Southern Rail Trail project is still ongoing, but it is also nearing that finish line as well. If you'll notice on the 100-foot bridge, the fencing has been replaced with a new black fence. We kept the old poles, so we will paint those in the near future, but definitely looks a lot more sturdy and secure and fashionable on our 100-foot bridge. So just a couple of punch list items, and that's mainly scratches in the asphalt, which might have been fixed this previous week as well when the asphalt companies were out fixing Overly Warman. So happy with that progress and closing out that project here shortly.
Any questions or comments on that? Okay, how about the Northern Rail Trail expansion?
More good news, our Northern Rail Trail contractor is very aggressively knocking out this extension and ready to move on to phases 1 and 2 of the widening next year. So we did hit one snag. We will likely not pave the dog park as well as the small frontage near the dog park. We just ran into wet conditions. As you recall, we installed fingers within the small dog park to help with percolation and getting the water out of there. We'll go figure the entire area also suffers from that as well. So we will get the fence repaired on the large dog side. There is stone within the future accessible pathways, so we'll get that back open to be enjoyed through the winter, and then this spring we'll close it again for a very short period of time for paving. So just the unfortunate nature of late season and attempting to pave as the temperatures drop.
Okay.
But otherwise, very, very happy with that project and how it's been going. To our rail trail tree donors, I just wanted to provide an update that the trees will begin going in. They have been marked and verified, so those trees will start going in here over the winter and likely finishing up in the spring. And honestly, they might finish up before the spring. They might knock it out this winter. So very happy with that as well. We'll have 69 new trees lining our northern expansion as we connect to Whitestown.
Any comments or questions on that?
I
All right.
saw a bunch of trees along 400.
They're already going in then.
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, there were a whole bunch
Perfect.
plugged in there today.
All right, the next item is
Said there are
the,
69, that
69. Yep.
donations, that's right.
So,
everybody, okay. The next item is the rail trail trailhead, and I know that Mr. Wollenberg had some questions about that at our last meeting, so we need to address some of those items.
absolutely. And I appreciate those questions. So the trailhead is moving very well as well. They have cleared the site and established most of the grading, and we're able to lay down an initial layer of asphalt so that as they continue working through the winter, they're not going to make such a mess. So JBM's intentions are to pivot and start working on the water line and the restroom facility over the winter months when it doesn't become conducive for asphalt, but does for brick and mortar still. So they'll make that shift. And so the change order to consider tonight would be for a credit of $73,956 to the contract. And that is to change out a prefabricated restroom facility into a stick-built facility on site. So the structure has been engineered, and we can talk about some of those pricing on those units for the structure here now. I do have a memo. Sorry, this was not included in the packet, but I'll read it aloud, see how that goes for you all tonight. But as we start talking about the trailhead facility, I think the most important thing to remember is that this is not a residential structure, but it is a public structure that is meant to stand for 50 plus years and also take the abuse, unfortunately, that sometimes is endured with public facilities. So these aren't porcelain restrooms. These are stainless steel. The doors are a specialty composite that's not going to dent. Certain items are just made to be in extreme temperatures, or they have stain resistant epoxies or paints to deter vandalism or other nuisances. So certainly these are specialty projects that have been utilized throughout the parks and recreation industry. And we have utilized those products to make sure our trailhead is presentable to the public whenever we open its doors. And then when an incident does occur, it is easy to maintain with our limited maintenance team. So always having pristine facilities to welcome not only Zionsville residents, but those that visit the Big 4 Rail Trail and park at that trailhead. So we can go through this memo. This was created by Tricia and her team of REA. They conducted an analysis of the market, looking at recent bids for similar items and comparing those costs to the costs proposed in this change order. So I will just read down this quickly. So JBM contractors work within the change order. Supervision fee is in line with the supervision fees included in the bid document. Additional supervision will be required by JBM to oversee construction of the building. JBM costs include approximately a $1,900 charge for winter conditions. This cost could be saved if construction of the building is delayed until spring. Architectural fees for this structure. The fees included detailed plans for contractor pricing and submittals to the state for design release permit. The fees are very reasonable for a $250,000 restroom building. The masonry work, fees for the normal MCU interior and split face, smooth face exterior CMU blocks are within the industry average for CMU installation and range from approximately $17 per square foot for the interior blocks and up to $20 per square foot for the exterior blocks. CMU labor costs are typically 3 to 4 times higher than the cost of materials. The exterior CMUs have integral color and won't be painted, which increases resistance to vandals and allows us to not have to continually paint those as they are fade with just being outside in the UV and other things. Insulation is required when the building is enclosed. So this is a year-round facility. Originally, the heat would have been questionable at best with the prefab, but the heat was changed for this custom build. And now there will be radiant floor heat and hanging heaters. Oh, sorry, they switch from radiant floor heat up to hanging heaters. This will create a far more energy efficient building than the previously prefabricated building. Signage, the cost proposed for each sign includes custom premium sign. The cost is higher than a stock sign, but will include a higher grade product. Stock signs can be purchased in place of the proposed custom signs for $150 to $200 savings of up to $514. Electrical, a market rate comparison of the materials was in line with the proposed costs. The fees for labor and adjustment appear very fair for electrical work. Plumbing, again, these are commercial items, so commercial grade stainless steel fixtures that are vandal resistant. Bi-level water cooler with bottle filler material cost is approximately $4,000 each. So I think there's 2 on the building. Yep. Assumed labor costs are on higher end, but still within industry average rates. 2018 bid for similar projects included plumbing costs very close to the cost included in here, which was approximately $40,000. So still comparable to that 2018 standard. Specialty fixtures, there is a commercial grade stainless steel vandal resistant. I'm guessing is that a mirror? What's that? Oh, everything. All the fixtures in there are ADA compliant as well as stainless steel. So we've all seen those baby changing stations in Walmart, and sometimes when the part you drop down is not there. So this baby changing station is stainless steel and costs approximately $2,000 each. So 2 facilities there. The FRP doors, frame and hardware. This is a fiberglass reinforced polymer door, solid core and custom made. It is resistant to moisture, chemicals, gases, salt, and microorganisms. The proposed costs are on the lower end of the industry average, and it includes vandal resistant hardware. So again, ensuring our surfaces are not going to be growing mold and other things as they're continually sprayed down and sanitized in between park maintenance visits. Wood framing, roof decking, drywall, and trim. It includes trusses, roof decking, roof installation, drywall, ceiling, and trim. Average commercial cost for this system is approximately $45 to $75, depending on the material specs. The cost included in the proposal is approximately $65 per square foot. So right there in the middle of that range. Standing seam metal roof. John Wallenberg, you brought up a great point about the cost of the roof. I did not realize at the time that that was a metal roof. So that kind of changes the materials that were used for that. So it is a 24 gauge material, higher grade than most metal roofs, which would be 26. The metal roof installation is higher in cost and difficulty when compared with typical asphalt shingles. Commercial metal roof installations average 2 to 3 times more cost than residential asphalt shingles. Approximate cost of standing seam metal roof included in a proposal is $32 per square foot, which falls within the average cost of installed materials. And finally, the interior painting. Approximate cost of painting included in a proposal is $4.25 per square foot. Interior paint includes 2 layers of 4 mil industrial grade high solids, vandal resistant and easier to clean. And the average cost for a commercial application of interior paint is $2 to $6 per square foot. So again, right in the middle of that range.
So you have a high level of confidence that we're getting the best price we can get.
For a facility that'll be exposed to the public and last us for several decades. Yeah.
Tricia, you concur? And John, how do you feel after?
Quick question. Well, thanks for going through that. I appreciate the extra attention to detail. Why is JBM charging profit on what they're already charging? they're charging to be on site and then they're charging 15% over that amount to be on site. What's that for?
That's industry standard.
I mean, I know
They
it's all industry.
usually- Yeah,
you know,
they
it's-
usually put that on there. The profit and administration, I think is what they call it.
Yeah.
So it's the additional submittals that they have to make for each of those items that are on the list. So they submit it to us and we say, yes, it's good, or no, it doesn't need spec.
Aren't we getting that by them being on site for $11,963 a
That's
month?
actually the guy that has to be out there supervising everything, all the trades going on, where with the prefab, JBM didn't have to do that because the prefab guys crane it in and set it down.
Yeah,
So JBM does have about 3 months that they wouldn't have been doing much work, that they will be now overseeing it.
So it's basically a project management fee.
what's the labor to prep, place and finish? What is that?
I did look at that one. I think that is, again, thinking more the foundations. So it's the site prep of the building, where before that building had a concrete slab on the bottom of it that they lift the whole thing and lay it down. So JBM wouldn't have had anything to do with that. Where now they are going to have to prep the site. The foundations are a separate line item, but that does include that prepping that they wouldn't do with just bringing in that building. I will say, and you'll see that, as you dive into it, I'm throwing all kinds of data and number at you, which is not really my thing, but some of the numbers were higher. Some of them were really good numbers. So it averages out to be, again, I have full confidence it is a good number from JBM.
Just because this was brought up, and so now I'm curious. You're putting baby changing stations in all the restrooms, right?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
They are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they will be in each restroom.
Okay, good.
And I pulled out those items just because they were the higher cost. And once you see that higher cost, it's like, oh, that bumps up the cost right there.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, I just saw it. And then I have that question generally when new facilities are built.
And recall our second change order for Overly Warman was a change in the steel prices from the time of contract award just to when they were getting started for ordering. So certainly steel has seen an increase in the last 2 years along with everything else. And we're building a mostly steel building on purpose.
Well, I too want to commend John for holding our feet to the fire on this, making sure we're getting the best price we can. It adds up. So thank you
Yeah.
for that. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? Then we need a motion to accept this change order. Is that right? Well, I'd think that John ought to make that motion if you're comfortable with doing so.
I don't want to make the motion. I think I'm going to be the sole nay vote.
Okay.
Just to go on the record as a nay vote, because I think JBM's sticking it to us a little bit because it looks a lot better than the prefabricated building. So while I agree that they're within the industry standard, some of those were on the high side, and I think they were able to put some of those on the high side because some of the others came in more reasonable. So I don't want to hold up the production. So if it sounds like it's going to get approved, so I'll stick to the no vote.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. John Selowitz makes a motion to approve the change order. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Tim Cassidy, second. Let's take a roll call vote. Jill Pack,
Aye.
John Wollenberg.
Aye.
Tim Cassidy,
Aye.
John Selowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale.
Aye.
I say aye as well. Let the record show the vote passes 6-1. All right. I'm going to add something to, anything else, Jared, before I go on?
That's all.
Last month, Amy Lacy gave us a schedule of meetings for 2023. And she has us slotted in again for the second Wednesday of every month. Is there any reason why we should object to that and ask her to change, or is everybody comfortable with continuing on the way we have been?
Good with me.
I'm fine.
Okay. Right, well, if everybody agrees, I don't think we have to do anything, right? We don't have to pass a resolution to keep doing what we're doing. So we'll just go on to the next item. And that, I want to jump over other board related items and go straight to claims. So we can get a look at claims right now and kind of finish up the business before we get to the rest. Does anybody have any questions about the claims or comments about the claims?
No.
Do we have a motion to approve the claims as sent?
I will move that we approve the claims as submitted.
Okay, we have Jill Pack with a motion to approve the claims as submitted. Do we have a second?
Second.
John Wallenberg seconds. Let's take a roll call vote. Jill Pack,
Aye.
John Wallenberg,
Aye.
Tim Cassidy,
Aye.
John Salowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. So the claims passed unanimously. All right, the next item on our agenda is under other board related items. And that is that we're going to recognize the two board members that are here for their last meeting tonight. Mr. Wallenberg and Mr. Cassidy, we appreciate their service, and we're going to give them a chance to give a final statement here in just a second. But I first wanted to put out a little narrative about each one of them, and then give us all a chance to say what we want to say to them. John Wallenberg has really been a stalwart board member since his initial appointment in 2015. As we've seen tonight, he's used his knowledge of finances and building costs to benefit the Parks Department for 8 years. And I think it's fair to say that he's the fiscal conscience of the board. On a personal note, I consider John to be a mentor to me. He was very encouraging to me when I started. He's been very supportive ever since and helpful in teaching me how to read those claims sheets each month. And when you think about the things that he's been involved with over the past 8 years, I mean, keep in mind that Overly Warman Park was only in the planning stages when he started. The Big 4 rail trail came to a dead stop on the 100-foot bridge, and there was no Heritage Trail Park at all. And as one of the board's liaisons to the golf course, he was instrumental in getting the course reopened during COVID, and also setting up a point of sale payment system that gave us more data about who was playing and when they were playing. And I just personally, I really believe that we're going to miss his steady hand and fiscal conservatism that he provides to the board. So with that, would anyone else like to say anything to John?
I'd just like to thank you for your service and your dedication to not only the Zionsville Parks and Recreation Department and the board, but also to the town. It's a great thing that you did to spend 8 years working on the park board. So thank you.
Right.
Thanks for passing on your kids' feelings for,
Yeah, I did that a lot.
bring that perspective. And also you were instrumental in the search, and when we got Jared here, and the HR things you've been really helpful with as well. Thanks.
And we have a lovely parting gift here. We have a brick from the original Main Street. It's heavy. I don't know if you need a paperweight. This will weight down a lot of paper.
Looks like it.
There you go.
If you're gonna throw it through a window, take the black off first. I tip.
And would you like to say anything, John?
In the interest of realizing that it's just me standing in the way of us going home, I'll keep it brief, but yeah, it's been an educational 8 years for me. I didn't quite realize it has been that long, but I've certainly enjoyed being of service to the town. I feel like I've learned quite a bit during this whole process. And my viewpoint as a board member was merely to, try to provide some, another viewpoint and then get out of the way. We've got, great people, Jared, Mike, Pete, that are here tonight. But there's a host of others in the department and on the board that I've served with that really are doing great things for the people of Zionsville, town of Zionsville, moving it forward. And I feel confident that, I'm leaving the board in great standing with the people that are here now, and certainly the department with great leadership in Jared, and looking forward to the good things that the department will have success in future years, and I'm anxious to see that. So thank you to the other board members, to the Jared and your staff. Like I said, I've learned a lot and certainly enjoyed my time on the board.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Well, you're not the only one standing in the way of us going home. Tim Cassidy is also doing that. And this is his last night, as you know. Tim has also been on the board since 2015, and he has served under the appointment of the mayor and the town council over that time. And that, I think, should be an indication of his universal respect that he has engendered as both a member of the board and as an officer. As president, when several of us joined the Parks Board, he has been, I would say, generous with his time and encouragement, and has been here through some significant projects like Overly Warming Park, Elm Street Green, Heritage Trail, the extensions of the rail trail on both the north and south end. And that's just really to name a few. What many people may not know is before his 8 years on the Parks Board, he was on the Pathways Committee for 4 years. And I actually counted that up. That was about 150 meetings that you've attended, and not to mention the countless phone calls and meetings with contractors that you did as board president. So his contributions to the health and wellness and connectivity in Zionsville are really immeasurable. He's also been involved in the development of 2 5-year planning documents for the Parks Department. And I hope I'm not breaking a confidence by saying this, but he told me last year that he was thinking of resigning from the board. But I sort of begged and pleaded for him to stay on in 2022 so he could be a part of developing the new 5-year plan. And I appreciate you following through with that. And I think it makes a difference when someone who has your long-term perspective can be involved in that process. I don't think you replace guys like Tim very easily, but I think, we're just going to have to do the best we can, kind of picking up the baton and moving forward as best we can, because I think his seat will be very difficult to fill. But anyone care to make a comment beyond that?
Yeah, I just wanted, having served with Tim for the duration of my term, Tim was always the mainstay, and the amount of institutional knowledge from being on the board and a resident of Zionsville always impressed me very much. And I kind of found myself leaning on that quite a bit. So yeah, to echo what John said, thanks for your service.
And we have a brick as well. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say thank you as well. I mean, the town is so much better off for both of you. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks. Zionsville's a great community, and, so many great volunteers like this board and our predecessors, and all the volunteers on other boards. So it's really been cool, because I'm going to give you the one final two maxims that I've learned. But it's been cool to be involved with the Pathways Committee back when we were, prioritizing connections between parks and schools and the Big Four, when that wasn't the Big Four rail trail back then, and prioritizing Pathways projects and trying to get interest in them. And then to see, I think my first board meeting was when the developers and owners of Overly Warming Park land came and said, would you like, these 50 acres for a park? And so to see that from beginning to end, and I walked 4 miles today with my son today. So it really is almost at an end. One of the reasons I wanted to stick around another year was because everything was late in getting it done. So it's been really fun to see that. And the Big Four rail trail, obviously, those have always been priority pathway projects and parks projects, and to see how everybody has loved. And there are thousands more people that are on the South Extension just this year. Think about that. And I'm crotchety. I used to like to quietly walk my dog on the gravel path when nobody else was there. But I must say that and there were a couple of other curmudgeon-y older folks that would walk their dogs and talk about, I can't believe we're going to pave this. But I'm glad to say that I interact with them, and they all have a great time now, meeting all the people on the South Rail Trail, and introducing their dogs to the cyclists and the joggers and all those folks. So to see that has been very fulfilling, to work and encounter the great professionals that we have on our staff. and this goes way back, but Mindy Murdoch deserves credit for, I mean, she was brand new when John and I started, and to see what's happening with recreation is great. And to work with Tricia McClellan has been phenomenal. She's been there really the glue from the beginning in terms of 5-year planning and all of these unbelievably exciting projects. And then to be involved with the search and find of Jared, that's been very fulfilling as well. So the maxims are everything takes longer than you think it will. So maybe that's I'm lucky to sort of see the end of a couple of these projects, but to see all the new projects that you guys are going to have fun with is exciting. And then remember, everything's political. We're talking about lots of money. So everything's political, and we have to understand that as board members for an important part of the town. The good news is that parks projects 99.9% of the time are really fun and really universally beloved, and everybody witness Carpenter Nature Preserve. That's doesn't matter who you're talking to, fiscal conservatives or crazy blazing liberals. They understand the history, if they understand, and almost always they do understand the history of Zionsville. They understand the benefits and enjoy living here. They embrace, and it's our job, has been, and your job will continue to be, to make sure that people to continue to embrace these parks projects that we have, and understand how important they are. And it's kind of a no-brainer fun job, and these projects are kind of no-brainers too. So thanks. It's really satisfying. 7, 10, 12 years, whatever it's been.
Do you want to say something, Jared?
I just want to thank you both for finding me. I couldn't have asked for a better community. I wanted to come home, and Tim dropped into my email one day, and was able to visit Zionsville and see what amazing legacy has already been established over the past 40 years, but also all the opportunities, and John and Tim, your mentorship with my first year here. Couldn't have survived without you both, and certainly getting me acclimated to the town. And just your guidance and leadership has been uncanny and so appreciated with new board members as well as myself. So I can't thank you enough for helping me come home, and I'm very happy to be here in Zionsville.
It's a lot of institutional knowledge walking out the door when these two guys leave here tonight. And we do have 2 new board members identified to replace them, pending official approval by the mayor's office and the town council. I'll send you more information before our January meeting on who those board members are going to be. But beyond that, along with thanking Tim and John for another great year, I want to thank everybody on the board. I think we've had a very good 2022. We've accomplished a lot. We've had near perfect attendance, which is great, and participation. So I think we all should feel good about that. Now, I want to remind everybody, including you guys, we got to sign the paperwork before you leave this building tonight.
Else we'll take your brick back.
Yeah, take your brick. The next park board meeting is January 11th of 2023. And I think we need to ask Tim to give us a motion to adjourn.
I move that this meeting be adjourned.
And I would like John to second that.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Thank you, everybody. And have a great night. Have a great Christmas too.